everyone, welcome back. I thought for this demo we'd follow on from the previous demo where we created the background. So I thought this would be a nice follow on to actually use the background because we created two backgrounds in the previous demo. So I thought we'd follow on with that because sometimes we say that, oh, we're going to use that background and then you never see us do anything with the background. So I thought I will actually do something with that. So again, the card is 3.5 inches by 8 inches. And it's a mixed media cardstock. So I'm using the Beetle stamp once again because I just love it and I thought it would be a nice follow on. But this time we're not going to use the whole image, we're going to use part of the image. So this time I'm going to use up to half of the image, just half, because you've got a border stamp doesn't mean that you have to use all that stamp. You don't have to. You can use part of the image, and if you want you can always use a piece of masking tape and mask that area off. What I'll do for the sake of the video, I'll be very professional and just wipe with my kitchen roll, just wipe any excess that I may have added. So I'm just wiping that off, and then I'm just going to reapply more ink to this area, just to this area of the card, of the stamp, sorry. So reapplying that just to make sure, even in that small area, that I get a good layer of ink. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over my card to decide where I want that piece of stamped image. And I'm happy for it to go here, like so. So I'm just going to add this part of the stamped image, not these here. So just this small part. And I love it when you can break stamps up and you can just use parts of them. I think that's part of the fun of stamping, is that you can just use part of the image. But I always think it's a good idea when we're demonstrating to sometimes show how we use that second print. Not to just say we're going to use it, but actually use it and show what we do with the second print. Because I often save a lot of my prints, even when I'm doing second generation prints, whether I'm brayering paint, I tend to keep a lot of those backgrounds. So I do actually use them. I use them a lot. So that gives us part of our image. If I bring in the previous card from the demo that we did previously, if you look, I used the whole image on that card. I used the whole image on that one. But look how it changes when you just use part of the image, and it shortens everything. It looks totally different. Just move that out the way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a spotlight. So I'm just going to spotlight that beetle a little bit. So I'm going to use my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink once again. And make sure you add a good layer of ink. Now this cut and dry foam is primed really well. If you're using a new piece of cut and dry foam or an ink blending tool, make sure you prime that tool and add a good layer of inking. You really need to build up that ink on your chosen tool. In this case, I'm using cut and dry foam. You may use a blending tool, but whichever tool or implement that you use, you need to make sure that it's really primed with a good layer of ink. The reason you prime it and make sure it's got a good layer of ink is that you get wonderful blending and shading with that ink colour. So what you do is you go over a couple of times just to add that spotlight to your card. So I'm starting from the centre outwards. So I'm blending from the centre of that circular piece and blending outwards just to get a nice shaded element around that outside edge of that circle. And that gives me a beautiful spotlight. I just love the little spotlight that gives. And then what I've got here is I've got a beetle, but this time in a different colour. I've just given it some pops of colour. It doesn't always have to be in browns, it can be in different colours. And I've added some clear embossing powder, and when it was totally cooled down, I cracked it. So I added some cracks to the back. So it just adds another little texture, and that gives me a pop of colour. Just the other one was all vintage. This one isn't all vintage. This one adds a pop of colour. So I really like that. So we'll adhere our bug. And this is going to be a nice simple card, Nothing too overcomplicated, but sometimes we've got viewers that don't like cards with too much detail. They like it when it's nice and simple. I'm still going to add layers, but in a simple format. So there's my little beetle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of white card, just tear that, take a piece of white card and then bring my stamp set in again. And this time stamp the beetle wording, because what I'm hoping is that will go over the top. Yes, it will. So we'll just add that beetle wording. So ink up the beetle, just that part of the stamp. And again, we're just using parts of the stamp. We're not using the whole image. And that's what I love about stamp sets. The fact that you can always add little touches if you want. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. And I think that's what makes stamps so versatile. The fact that you can add so many layered elements. And the fact that you can break the stamp sets up rather than just using them as a whole. So if I wasn't doing a video, I'd cut this on my cutter so that you get nice straight edges. Let's move that out of the way. Bring our card back in. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little touch of shading around that outside edge of the card. Just so it ties in nicely. I don't want to cover it all up because I want some of that to be visible. And what I'm wanting to do is I want to add a paper clip over the top. But I want to vintage that paper clip up a little bit. So let's just move this out the way and use that paper clip and just add some alcohol ink. So this is just alcohol ink and it's ginger alcohol ink. And I'm just going to dab that paper clip just to tone down that touch of silver. It just tones it down a little bit. So it's not just too bright. You know, for our vintage tone card, we don't want it too bright. So what I'm going to do now is add my sentiment or my text. So add beetle, like so. And I'm always looking for different ideas of how to highlight areas. I'm always looking for different ways. So for me, this paper clip works beautifully. And what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of the adhesive round my paper clip. It takes a few moments for that to dry and it dries clear, so it's not a problem. And what we want to do is just add this here, like so. And I just think that's a fun way to showcase the text. Just a different way. I'm always looking for different ways just to showcase things. And what I've got here is a little, I love these, a little magnifying glass. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a bit of colour to that magnifying glass. Just around the edges, just again to vintage it up a little bit. So I'm just adding alcohol inks, just to the metal, because the alcohol inks work perfectly on the metal. And then what I'm going to do, I love these fun elements, and this actually magnifies. So I'm going to place that over the letter G, So just apply my adhesive. Again, this will take a few moments to take. So you do need to give it a few moments for the adhesive to take. Then what I'm going to do is add my white splatters, which is what I love adding. Just a few splatters. Try not to get them on your magnifying glass because you still want it to magnify that word. But I just think that the magnifying glass and the paper clip just give it a quirky little touch. And what I was thinking was you can add this to a black mount like so. But if you wanted to add some different elements, why not try drying some leaves out of the garden? Drying some leaves from the garden and adding a piece of leaf to your card, just like so. I just think that looks beautiful. That's a dried leaf from the garden. So think outside the box with your stamps. Just think what other elements you could add. So I just think a lovely leaf element looks beautiful on that. And I'm just trying to make it so that when you repeatedly see me demoing all the time, that even if I just bring one little touch that's different to the stamp, it just gives you another little idea, another little quirky touch. So I hope you enjoyed that demo, and I'll be back shortly. Bye for now.